Saurabh. Before we begin our session, let's join our hands to recite the auspicious Namokar mantra. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayaryanam, Namo Vajjayanam, Namo Loe Sabva Sahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro, Sabva Pava Panasano, Manglanam Cha Sabvesim, Padamam Havai Mangalam. With this, a very warm welcome to one and all who is present here for this session, that is a conversation with Shri Manish Modi, who is at presently leading Hindi Granth Karyalay, a leading publishing house, not just in the field of Jain studies, but also overall, and has a legacy of more than 100 years. I'm very happy to welcome you, sir, Mr. Manish Modi, sir, for this particular session. But before we begin with our session, for those who are joining Ancient Jainism for the first time, let me introduce you to this platform of Ancient Jainism. Ancient Jainism is an online initiative which has been established by a young mind, so Jain, my friend, which is intended to spread awareness on Jain history, heritage, archaeology, literature, and all the other related aspects of Jain studies. For this team of Ancient Jainism is organizing multiple online I am very proud to let you all know that scholars like Professor John E. Tiwari and many other scholars from aspects of Jainism and its rich legal who are visiting us for the first, so we'll be happy to put the links of it's a kind request. Before session should be in the form of an informal pass. I would like to introduce our today's guest, Mr. Manish Modi, sir. Mr. Manish Modi is a writer, translator, publisher, and a very well-known public speaker. He has a number of publications
you don't want to come to the center. So
has
you
presented several
pick up
papers
your
on
phone
various
and walk
platforms.
down.
He has written an ebook named Essentials of the Jaina Dharma, where he explains the Jain religion with the help of citations from multiple Jain texts from the medieval and late medieval period. He has held various positions in several organizations and is a member of the Asiatic Society of Mumbai. He is an editorial advisor for Jainpedia, Institute of Jainology, London since 2009, Jain Study Circular, New York since January 2008. Also, for those who do not know, he is the great grandson of the legendary scholar Pandit Nathuram Premi ji, and as such has been brought up in a kind of a profoundly literary and very ethical and non-sectarian approach to Jainism. So it's very privilege for ancient Jainism that we have Mr. Manish Ji Modi with us. So welcome, sir.
Thank you. Jai Jinendra.
Yes. Jai Jinendra, sir. To begin with and to break the ice and to begin this session, not a very academic level, there's one doubt, not doubt, but it has been intriguing me since I have read Pandit Nathuram Premi ji. And the thing is that in his dedication page of Jain Sahitya or Itihas, he writes about his wife, and I would like to read it for our viewers also so that they get the context of what this is coming from. And I would read it, and I quote, जिसकी अविश्रांत सेवा शुश्रूषा ने अनेक लंबी लंबी और कष्ट साध्य बीमारियों के समय मृत्यु के मुंह में जाने से बचाया, जिसके पवित्र साहचर्य ने पशु से मनुष्य बनाया, कष्ट काल में धैर्य और साहस दिया, समाज सुधार कार्यों में सदा उत्साहित किया, जिसने सब कुछ दिया ही लिया कुछ भी नहीं, और जो अप्रत्याशित रूप से परलोक यात्रा करके हृदय में सदा के लिए एक गहरी टीस छोड़ गई कि मैं उसे सुखी न कर सका अपनी उस स्वर्गीय साध्वी पत्नी को. So, sir, what is the story behind Pandit Nathuram Premi ji writing such a deep kind of a dedication for his wife?
Jai Jinendra once again, everyone. Ancient Jainism, Saurabh Jain, Oshin, aapko dhanyavad that you called me here. I feel very honored to be here. Premi ji, he started off as a poet of Urdu and Hindi literature. He wrote different kinds of kavita, chand, chaubola, ityadi, various verse forms in Hindi, and he wrote in Urdu as well. And at one point, there was so much poverty in his life that uh, they were on the verge of starvation. So he borrowed 10 rupees from a friend and came from Bundelkhand, from a place known as Devri, district Sagar, to Bombay. It took him 3-4 days because he would get off in the evening, cook his food because he ate before sunset, ate the food, rested on the platform, took the next train on the next day. That's how he came to Bombay. Now, after he came to Bombay, he was exposed to Pandit Pannalalji Bakliwal. Here, he knew Urdu and Sanskrit and Hindi to begin with, and of course, Bundelkhandi, his mother tongue. He came to Bombay, he learned Gujarati, he learned Marathi, he learned Bengali because of Pannalalji Bakliwal, who was a scholar of Bengali, came from Calcutta. And he was from Kishangarh, but he lived in Calcutta. And then he learned Prakrit because firstly he knew Prakrit Prakash well, and secondly because he was constantly interacting with Shwetambar sadhus like Muni Punna Vijayji, Muni Jin Vijayji, who were his admirers and who worked with him and who were inspired by Premiji. So in fact, when you read about the founding of the Mahavir Jain Vidyalaya, one of the things Muni Punya Vijayji and Jin Vijayji have written is they said that we were inspired by Premiji. He was publishing Digambar Jain works under the Manikchandra Jain Granth Mala. So we were inspired to do the same for the Shwetambar Jain albums. So with all these people and all this interaction, he became the scholar that he did become. And even more interesting, Oshin, is the what he responded with when he was honored with this fest shrift in Calcutta. मैं तो मना कर रहे थे, I don't want to go to Calcutta because it is time of the famine. So there's no need, आप food waste करेंगे. And then उनको समझाया नहीं, there will be not a single morsel of food wasted. He agreed to go to Calcutta, and in his acceptance speech, he said that मैं तो कुछ किया ही नहीं, मैं तो किताबें छापता था और बेचता था, अपना घर चलाता था, उसमें कौन सा बड़ा काम किया. But that's Premiji. So Premiji, when he came to Bombay, he was not married. Then he got married, his wife, and he had a single child, Hemchandra Modi, my grandfather, who was a scholar of Bangla and Jyotish. So at some point, he also, Premiji's wife, Rama Devi, she brought her nephew to Bombay. Bombay is like New York or whatever. Now it's the moon, I guess. It is the most fascinating place in the world. So everyone wanted to go to Bombay. So Rama Rani brought her, Rama Devi, she brought her nephew to Bombay कि ये भी पढ़ जाएगा हेमचंद्र के साथ. As fate would have it, that boy met with an accident and died. That broke Rama Devi's heart, and she said, "This is my brother's child, and he died here." And she also passed away. So Premiji was a widower for a very, very long time, and he felt the pain. And he was very close to his wife. He was, see, these are all people inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, by Rabindranath Tagore, and by all the Bengali literature that Premiji read. He read Sharat Babu. He printed all of Sharat Babu's works. He printed 52 books by Sharchan Chattopadhyay, half of them translated by my grandfather, Hemchandra Modi. So he read, see, Bengali literature, at least modern Bengali literature, is inspired very deeply by the reformist movement of that was there in Britain. And so he was imbibing those qualities, those values as well. And his friends, Pandit Bechadas Doshi, Pandit Suklalji. So Pandit Bechadas Doshi also wrote that we had such great fun. At that point, Premiji was living in Ghatkopar, which is like the jungles of Bombay back then. And so we used to go for a walk on the hill. So Premiji, his wife Rama Devi, I and my wife, four of us would go for a walk. And we mentioned that Rama Devi was no less than Premiji as an intellectual or as a thinker. So that is the background, very profoundly intellectual, very Gandhian background where equality was part of the understanding of life. And that's why when she passed away, he missed her very intensely. And as you know, he lost his son when Hemchand Modi, his son, was very young. He was, I think, 30 when he passed away. So Premiji raised both his grandchildren, got both of them married, got both of them settled. And after that, he passed away in 1960, 30th of Jan, 1960. A very long story, full of a lot of glory in terms of his pioneering works of publishing. He was friends with Munshi Premchand. He published the first novel, Godan, in Bombay in 1936. And he published lots of other works by Munshi Premchand. He published all the big writers that you see, Hajari Prasad Dwivedi, Sudarshan, Jainendra, Yashpal, all these guys published by us. So he had these incredible highs as a publisher of Hindi, as a publisher of Jain literature, and as a publisher of Bengali literature. But personal life, there was the tragedy of losing his wife young and then losing his son young. And it was a very difficult moment. And one very poignant moment, let me share with you. At some point, Premiji was so upset when he lost his son that he was, by then, he's built his property, and Hindi Granth was the biggest publishing house in India for Hindi. And he started selling everything recklessly. Ki ab kya bacha, mera beta to chala gaya. And his very close friends, Dr. A. N. Upadhyay and Dr. Hiralal Jain, the two giants who worked on Shatkhandagam, they were very close friends, and they were here, and they would call him Dada because he was older. So he said, Dada, ye kya kar rahe ho? I said, nahi, ab to mera beta chala gaya, ab kya bacha? I said, but tumhare pote hain. My father was 7, my uncle was, I think, 4 or 5. तो इनका क्या? I said, नहीं, अब क्या करना मुझे इतनी प्रॉपर्टी का? So Hiralal ji saw my great grandfather's mood कि इनको सुनना नहीं है. So he told my grandmother, the widow, कि बेटा जो भी तुम्हारा ज्वेलरी वगैरह तो मुझे दे दो, दादा तो मानेंगे नहीं, सब बेच देंगे, तकलीफ हो जाएगी. So big box of jewelry he took, and he took it with him for safekeeping. And imagine Professor Hiralal Jain worked everywhere. He worked in Nagpur, Vaishali, all these places, and he carried that trunk of jewelry with him. So when my father got married, that's in 1953, 7 December 1953, he brought back that trunk of jewelry. And he gave it to Premiji and to his daughter-in-law, my Dadima, कि चंपा भाई ये लो, ये अपने अपने बेटे को दे देना, पोते को दे देना. And it was all there, and Premiji had even forgotten about it by then. But that is the kind of bonding they had, that love, that deep sense of affinity, sense of responsibility for each other and each other's families. That's why they were such great champions and such giants. The kind of work they have done is unmatched even now. So that's who he was, and that's the kind of people his friends were. You see, even
Thank you
Pandit
very much.
Suklaji writes, you're welcome.
Uh-huh.
Even Pandit Suklaji, when he writes in his autobiography, the first thing he writes is that when I was a child and working, studying in a hostel, we used to sing a song that was penned by Premiji. So when Premiji, I met him for the first time, speech dene aaye the, Premiji, I sang that song to him. Hey, you've been a hero and inspiration to me. So that close connection was very strong. Pandit Bechar Das ji, Pandit Suklal ji, Pandit Premi ji, Dr. Hiralal Jain, A. N. Upadhyay, Dr. Mahendra Kumar Nyayacharya, Jagdish Chandra Jain. They were all giants in their own field, and they worked very closely with each other. Punya Vijay ji, Jin Vijay ji, they were all working in different fields, but there was a sense of being bound together in this great destiny of Jain studies.
Yes, yes, absolutely, sir. And in fact, when I was reading these forewords by Hiralal Jain sir and A.N. Upadhyay sir in the compilation work of Jain Sahitya or Itihas, it was so
Mhm.
touching. And in fact, the kind of atmosphere that we have today in the present day academics, not many people are like brotherly to each other. Like people would probably there are things like stealing of data or maybe jealousy or something. But then looking at these doyens of Jain studies and literature, it appears that this is what we should actually follow for. And thank you so much,
Yes,
sir,
this is
for
what we should.
highlighting the
Yeah,
kind of personal examples that these two scholars had with Pandit ji. Thank you, sir.
yeah, you're welcome.
For our participants who are here for the first time and who are new to Gen Studies or who are beginners in Gen Studies, of course, including me, I would like to request you, sir, if because you have studied Gen literature a lot, if you can just elaborate on the structure and classification of Jain literature, just to begin with for our participants, so that they have an idea of what sort of work has been done and what sort of work is being carried out right now related to Jain literature. That would be amazing, sir.
Okay, so basically, Jainism, we've had these eras in Jainism. The first era was the Tirthankar era, where the Kevli was present, and he had these divine sermons called the where the Dibidhvani was there, would explain the realities of life. And once the Tirthankars passed away, we had the Kevalis who were omniscient. They were not Tirthankars, but they were equally omniscient, and they still had the divine truth, complete absolute truth with them. And they would disseminate that information. Once the Kevalis also passed away, we have Gautam Swami, Sudharma Swami, and Jambu Swami. After then, we had a parampara of Shuddha Kevalis, where they did not have the experience of the knowledge, but they had the knowledge equivalent to that of a omniscient. So that parampara continued, and till that time, there was no dispute of any sort. There was a very clear understanding of Jainism. It was one. Now, as that time passed, people's memories dwindled and their concentration diminished. That era of knowledge went away, and then we had people who had partial knowledge of the reality. So you had Stoli Bhadracharya, you had other acharyas who knew parts and sections of the entire scripture, but not everything. So after that, there were these two paramparas which started, the Sachel and the Achel. Now these paramparas, even the differences took about 500 to 800 years to actually settle into distinct paramparas, but there was this period of time which is the overlapping period where they were all writing into Prakrit, and then later on they shifted from which is known as the Agam Yug. So you had the Shasta Yug, the Tirthankars, and then you had the Agam Yug, where the scriptures were composed in Prakrit, whether Digambar or Shwetambar. After that, you had the Darshan Yug, first, second century Common Era. By then, a large chunk of the writing was done. And then we moved on into Sanskrit. So you have Saman Bhadracharya, you have Uma Swami or Uma Swati, you have other giants who are writing now in Sanskrit to reach out to the common public. So now you have the Darshan Yug. So you have the Shasta Yug, the Agam Yug, then you have the Darshan Yug. They're again writing in Sanskrit, they're talking about philosophy and what happens when you talk about other philosophies and your own philosophy in a language that everyone else understands. There's dispute and debate. The Shastrarthas began. India has a very rich culture of Shastrarthas within the Hindu tradition itself, within the Jain tradition itself, within the Buddhist tradition itself, and all three guys with each other. You have Hinduism and Jainism and Buddhism, all three having Shastrarthas with each other. So they were common with each other on certain points and different with each other on certain points. Certain points let be Jain and Hindus against the Buddhists, certain points Hindus and Buddhists against the Jains, certain points Jains and Buddhists against the Hindus. But that was all done in very deeply distinguished scholarly language. So it is known as the age of formal logic, the Nyaya age. After the Nyaya age, you have the diminishing somewhat of knowledge, and then you have the Bhakti age coming in, again influenced by the Hindu Bhakti age. By then you had the Islamic conquest and all sorts of things, external influences were coming in. So Bhakti age is a very circling the wagons, और कुछ नहीं आता मुझे, आनम तानम कछु न जानम, सेठ जी बचन परमाणम. Okay, then you have the circling of the wagons, Bhakti age, okay, let's do lots of rituals, अच्छे से Bhakti करो, and some beautiful literature has been written in the Bhakti age. But the Agamic Parampara continued. We have Acharya Dev Sen, we have Acharya, there was Acharya Nemi Chandra, many other Acharyas were talking about the Agams even after the 10th century. But that diminished and was also accompanied by a very strong sense of ritualistic worship, which is fine. And then overall, with the impact of westernization, and it was felt that, especially with Digambar Jains from the 2nd, 3rd century, sorry, from the 10th or 12th century Common Era, as Islam became more prevalent in northern India, we find that the Digambar Jain sadhus were no longer there. You had the Bhattarakas who took their place and did a very able job. And with the Shwetambar tradition also, you find that the Samvegi sadhus were no longer there. They were not replaced. They evolved into the yatis, who were not quite following all 5 vows completely. And so somehow from the, say, 12th, 13th century Common Era till the beginning of the 20th or late 19th century, you have these, in the Digambar side, you have the Bhattarakas. Shwetambar side, you have the Yatis, who are taking care of the tradition in a very effective manner, but somehow there was a certain spark that was perhaps missing. Then in the late 19th century, you have the revival of the Samvegi sadhus in the Shwetambar Murti Pujak Parampara, and you have a very strong revival of Digambar sadhus with Acharya Adi Sagar Anklikar, Acharya Shanti Sagar from the Bispant Parampara, and Acharya Shanti Sagar Chani a little bit later from the Tera Panth Parampara. And now all the sadhus that you see come from these three forefathers. In the Digambar side, so in the Shwetambar side, you have the various gachas, which are now the Tapagach, Khartar Gach, Paichal Gach, Achal Gach, probably one or two other gachas. So now you have this very strong revival, and with sadhus, especially Shwetambar Parampara, you had a very strong revival, a brand new renaissance of writing, which is why even today you see so much of literature being written in the Shwetambar Parampara by sadhus, brand new literature in Sanskrit, brand new literature in Prakrit. So they're not just scholiasts, they're actually writing. They're writing brand new scriptures, and it's a very powerful tradition. I remember 5 or 6 years ago when Gachadipati Jayaghoshuri was still there, and we were discussing starting a magazine called Setu Bandh, purely in Sanskrit. General Sanskrit essays by sadhus and by Jain sadhus. And we were discussing कि साल में 2 issue निकालेंगे, इतने लेख कहाँ से आएंगे? We planned 50 articles per magazine, and we were so heavily oversubscribed by the Tapagach itself, forget the other gachas, that we had to have 4 issues of Setu Bandh per annum. So there's a huge renaissance of writing, especially the Shwetambar Murti Pujak Parampara, writing in Prakrit, writing in Sanskrit. In the Digambar Parampara, we've had very good lay scholars, a very, very strong tradition writing, starting from Premi ji, Pandit Devkinandan Nayak, A.N. Upadhyay, Hiralal ji, Pandit Phulchand Shastri, Kailashan Shastri, Mayan Kumar Nyayacharya, Jagdish Chandra Jain, and hundreds of scholars who've done fantastic work, absolutely magnificent work. Pandit Balchandji Shastri. I mean, you look at the entire Shruta Skand of Digambar works, and in the 20th century, a good 70-80% has been published, edited and translated by Digambar lay scholars. So there's a very strong parampara. In the Shwetambar community, you have the sadhus writing. Digambar community, you have the Shravaks writing. Very, very good writing on both sides. And I think we're very fortunate and blessed that we have so many people who are writing such wonderful things, and they're accessible to us. And I'm thankful to the internet. Jainworld.com started, I think, 1988, something like that. We had Vinod Bhai Daryapurkar. He's an IT professional in Dubai. He started jainworld.com. And he said, yaar, Samaysar hum sari padhte, Professor A. Chakravarti Samaysar, published by Bharati Gyanpeeth. A. Chakravarti Sahab was a giant scholar. His Bhumika is a 150-page introduction to Samaysar, which is a magnificent tome on the evolution of philosophy in India and how it began. So it's a cultural study also, not just a philosophical study. So he started with that book. It's called Samaysar English Translation by Professor A. Chakravarti. And his daughter Shivali was 10 or 12 years old. He said, beta, tu typing kar. This is 1987, 88. They didn't have a lot of technology. So this 12-year-old girl is sitting and typing. Pura ka pura Samaysar was uploaded. Then over the years, jainworld.com did very well. They've done Mission 24L. So they've got Jain scriptures in 24 languages. And then, of course, there are Jainpedia. There is the great, fantastic Wikipedia. There is Jain e-library. There are so many of these now. There's Jain Quantum. There's so much great work out there which you can refer to. I mean, the other day I was looking at Tikas and Jain studies, and Nalini Balbir ka article mil gaya. There 10 more articles mil gaye, bhai. There's so much work written on these things. It's amazing. So technology has helped us tremendously, and guys like you, young scholars like you, and there's so much. ISJS is churning out scholars. We have all these departments set up by Jaswant Bhai. He set up 50 departments, 50 or 51, something like that. All these young scholars, we're very hopeful to start a new tradition of scholars. Again, scholars who will work with each other, not compete with each other, and who will give us tremendous works. Now, you look at just the Agamas, the 11 Agamas and Drishtivad from the Digambar side. We've had translations which were done nearly 100 years ago. Phulchand Shastri's translation, what? 90 to 100 years old. Okay. We want fresh work. We want young scholars. We have 11 Agams, Angabhaya, 45 Agams there. Brand new. We want to produce new Padmanabh Jainis, new Nalini Balbirs. And we are very hopeful with Jaswant Bhai's this initiative that we have these new scholars coming in. And all aspects, because I remember many 10, 15 years ago, I had no idea that scholarship is beyond books also. And then I think John Cord sat me down to Manish, there's different kinds of scholarship. It's not Shastra. Shastra scholarship is excellent. But you need people to explore other avenues of scholarship also. And he explained to me, ये भी होता है scholarship, ये भी होता है, अच्छा ऐसा भी है. So yes, ये भी होता है. And the kind of work Eric Daniel Boss has done on Yatis, or someone else has done on Bhattarakas. This is all crucial work. It's helping us understand what took place 800 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or 2,000 years ago. There's so much of subaltern history that is there. And I think the more we explore upper branch scriptures, the more we'll find subaltern history. I remember Eva de Clark told me, कि देखो, एक तो जो Jain Ramayana Mahabharata है, that talks of the kings. And then you have the Jain Ramayana Mahabharata in upper branch, the poem chain which talks about the common man, the common soldier, जो साल में 12 महीने में 10 महीने खेती करता था, किसान था बेचारा, 2 महीने he would be a soldier, hired soldier, and he would be paid by the king on daily wages, and he would go, and when he's departing to fight the war, his wife is embracing him, they're both crying कि बच्चों का क्या होगा, मुझे छोड़ के ना जाओ. This kind of subaltern history is also there in upper branch literature, and the more we are reading this stuff, the more access we have to funds, the more access we have to scholars. This will all emerge. I'm also hopeful that with OCR and AI, we'll have auto translators also, hopefully at some point. Right now, I've seen what's there, it's ghastly. But with time, it will improve. It will get where we want it to be. So it's a very exciting time. There's so many books. I remember one, I'll give you the very, very funny story. No, I do a lot of translations. अभी तक 100-150 translations कर लिया. I've lost count. I've stopped writing the CV because I've lost count क्या क्या किया है मैंने. So at some point in 2010 or 12, I did translation of this book called Jeev Daya. Very happily कर लिया मैंने. ये सब हो गया, छोड़ दिया, इंटरनेट पर डाल दिया. That's it. You should run jainlist@yahoogroups.com. उस पे कहीं पर पढ़ा होगा, and that I forgot about it. Then about 5-6 years ago, Kamal Bhaiya, Dr. Kamal Jain of Bori, Kamal Bhaiya said, Manish, मुझे manuscript मिली जीव दया प्रकरण की. I said, चलो publish करते हैं. Nice simple text, 10th century के बाद का है. It's in Maharashtra Prakat. So I said, let's do a translation. So Kamal Bhaiya did work. I did a Hindi and English Kamal Bhaiya edited the entire text. I cannot read transcripts. I mean, those manuscripts. He did the entire editing. Devanagari में reproduce किया. I did the Hindi and English translation, publish किया. And then someone points out, ये तुम publish तो करे हो, but तुमने पहले इस पे काम किया है. So क्या बात कर रहे हो? So इतना कुछ है कि we forget what we have done. And that's the beauty of it. But there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. And I'm just excited that all these texts are coming up. With OCR, we'll be able to read all these texts, all these handwritten manuscripts, and we'll be able to do more work on them.
So, sir, that you were mentioning multiple manuscripts. In fact, Jainism has been blessed with a very rich tradition of the Gyan Bhandars or the Shrut Bhandaras. Sir, where do you
Yes.
see that the scholars of the past, like the 19th and the 20th century, they would have had multiple difficulties in accessing these Gyan Bhandaras? Maybe they were not open to others, or were there any problems which they faced? And what are the problems that the scholars today are also facing for approaching these kinds of Gyan Bhandaras? And what
Oh
is the
my
further
God. Back
prospect?
then, sorry. Yes, back then it was a huge problem. In fact, recently I went with Kalpana Bain, Kalpana Bain state of Ahmedabad and Nalini Balbir. We went to Gitat Ganga in Ahmedabad. And Kalpana Bain said, it's more difficult to access a manuscript than to actually translate the manuscript. It's that difficult. So in the times of Premi ji and Hiralal ji and A.N. Upadhyay, it was so difficult. Yeah, the Elak Pannalal Granth Bhandar in Bombay is a Digambar Jain Granth Bhandar, and now we have no trace of where it's gone. It went to Ajmer or Jaipur, God knows, it's no longer accessible. Shwetambars have done a very, very good job. They've created about 500-600 brilliant Granth Bhandars which cover everything. So kudos to the Shwetambar Jain Murti Puja community. They have 500 plus Granth Bhandars, not just manuscript Bhandars, Granth Bhandars, and they keep everything, right from Bill's Encyclopedia of Jainism to the oldest works, handwritten works on cloth, handwritten works on paper. Okay, now the problem is that many of these Granth Bhandars are, they're very well-meaning, but sometimes they can suffer from xenophobia. So they are not always happy to share the wealth. But there are Granth Bhandars like Koba, which are very helpful, and others which sometimes are not. But yes, Ocean, it's a problem even now for scholars to access all the manuscripts. But the first part, that all these Granth Bhandars are there in existence, and they've done a wonderful job just creating multiple copies. I remember 2010 में this Achar Hemchandra Suri from Achar Bhuvan Bhanu Suri Maharaj Sampradaya. Achar Hemchandra Suri is the Dada Guru of Priyam Maharaj Sahib, who's written about 200 books in Sanskrit and Prakrit. Brand new books, original writing. So Acharya Hemchandra Suri, I was very close to him, and he had some, I will not disclose the sum, he had a huge donation back then. And he said all of this money is going to print more manuscripts and put them in all Granth Bhandars. So they just did it, manuscript reprint karo, all, and the logic behind that is very interesting. Why did we have so many Granth Bhandars? के जैसलमेर में भी रखो और कराची में भी रखो और मद्रास में भी रखो और पंजाब में भी रखो, क्यों? Because कहीं पर आग लग जाए, कहीं floods हो जाए, how are you going to save it? So you have this multiple Granth Bhandars, and right now in India we can boast of 500 plus Granth Bhandars, which are seriously good work, and it's something to be it's remarkable. It's something to be proud of. Not many other communities can boast of this. In fact, if you may know, Pandit Rahul Sankrityayan ji, एक बार, he wrote it somewhere, I think in Darshan Digdarshan, that जैनों को कोई शास्त्र लिखने में पराजित नहीं कर सकता. We have written so heavily and so beautifully and so eloquently. We punch well above our weight when it comes to shastra writing. We've done amazing work in all aspects of human endeavor. And we've written in Sangam Tamil, works like Tirukkural, to Sanskrit, Prakrit, Apabhransh, Urdu, Persian, Hindi, Marathi, Kannada, all modern languages, all versions of Prakrit. You have Short Seni Prakrit, you have Maharashtra, you have, there's some Jain works in Paishachi Prakrit. Also, Vikram Betal is in Paishachi Prakrit, by the way. There is so much of variety of Jain works. And I recently discovered that we always thought the upper branch writing was restricted to Digambar Jain writings. Now we found out that even Shwetambar Jains have written in upper branch. So there's no ancient language in which we've not written. That's our strength. And Rann and all these Pump and all these great Kannada Kavis who wrote in Hale Kannada. So even Kannada, we've got this huge imprint. And of course, the first piece of literature in Gujarati is called the Nemi Rajul Ras, which is also obviously a Jain work. So we are very well represented in India in terms of writing scriptures and our Granth Bhandars. And I think with time, the heads of Granth Bhandars will become more open with the information. Already with technology, you don't have to, touch a manuscript. You just photograph it, keeping your camera 2 inches or 5 inches above. So, dhire dhire, I think all our manuscripts will be available online. And that's one thing we are working for.
Okay.
To have everything available online. So then, you don't have to ask anyone permission. It'll be the way you have Google Books or you have Wikipedia. सब कुछ available है. आपकी जितनी मर्जी, जितनी ताकत, उतना आप डाउनलोड कीजिए, पढ़िए, आत्म कल्याण करें.
I hope, sir, that this particular direction that you have given us regarding the specific restrictions and then how the restrictions were loosened and how it can be utilized with the usage of technology, AI, OCR, and multiple other things would be helpful for further scholars to work upon all these things. And
Yes, we need it.
but
And Ocean, I feel like हर जो बच्चा पढ़ाई करता है, जन्म लगता है यार, इसको give उसको I would like to give 1 lakh rupees to each scholar who's working. कि बेटा तुम कितना अच्छा काम कर रहे हो. It's so wonderful, and you see Western scholars, Indian scholars, non-Jain, क्या फर्क पड़ता है? आप काम करो ना. See, Jainism is not a race. It's not an ethnicity. It's a religion. It's a path of life, it's a code of existence based on self-realization. तो जो चलेगा उसका भला होगा भाई. समोषण में सबको ही आते हैं, जानवर भी आते हैं. So everyone is welcome, and we must encourage all of you, youngsters who are working on Jain studies, because there are very few of us, very, very few. So हमें ऐसा लगता है, there is this, my understanding is that we have 2 beautiful treasures that Bhagwan gave us, Jin Bimb and Jin Agam. So we have focused almost exclusively on Jin Bimb and not so much on Jin Agam. So if we start focusing on Jin Agam, there'll be, restoration of the balance that ought to be there. And we will all gain, Jinwani Ma ki jo seva karta hai, he's going to get the greatest benefits that are there, that exist in the universe. So there's nothing higher, there's no higher calling than this.
In fact, sir, I believe that a lot of like the punya is being earned by publishing houses like Hindi Granth Karyalay, who is doing this work since more than a century and taking this further, sir. Like in the 19th century and in the 20th century, when these works on Jainism were being done, what sort of problems were being faced? And to just give a little bit of context to this particular thing, I would again refer to Pandit Ji's this foreword from Jain Itihas or Sanskriti. एंड ही सेज सारे लेखों के संशोधन में अभी 3-4 महीने और लग जाते, परंतु इस समय महायुद्ध की विभीषिका भारत के बिल्कुल सिर पर आ पहुंची और उसके भय से बंबई नगर खाली होने लगा। इसलिए अब इतने समय तक ठहरने का साहस न रहा, न जाने कल क्या हो जाए, इसलिए जितना तैयार था उतना ही पाठकों की सेवा में उपस्थित कर देना ठीक प्रतीत हुआ।
Look, say that is a 1942 edition. If you look at 1956 edition, that is edited by my mother. By then she was married and she was really interested in this work. So she was participating in the proofreading and editing of that work, the 1956 edition. And then Premi ji told her, "Beta, तुम्हारा नाम भी लिख दूं?" So नहीं दादा क्या करना नाम का, आपका नाम है उतना, उसमें हम सब आ गए सम्मिलित हैं. So that is better edited. But yes, all of these problems were there. It was a Vibhishika, World War II, and the fear was that Bombay would be bombed. It was a major industrial city of India, and there was a real fear that Bombay would be attacked. And that's when he sent his son, Hemchand Modi, and his daughter-in-law and his grandchildren to Chalisgaon, where Hemchand Modi unfortunately passed away. But the challenges that were there, I can tell you, recently I spoke about this, with Shwetambars, they were very well funded because the sadhus themselves were involved with the government. See, Jain Samaj mein kya hota hai? Wherever the sadhus take an interest, the funding is excellent because the Shravakas are very motivated, but they follow the lead of the sadhus, which is excellent. But Digambars mein, chunki the sadhus were not focused on literature, the funding was always a problem. So Premi is written eloquently. It's also part of my upbringing, this story, that when the Shakkhandagam was ready, there was no money to print it. And so they approached this Seth Sitabrai, Gulabrai, Lakshmi Chand of Vidisha, who later on became my Masaji also, but that's later on. And Premi ji and Hiralal ji and Jamna Prasad sub-judge, all three of them approached this gentleman in Vidisha, we've heard you're spending 30,000 rupees on a Panch Kalyanak and to build yet another temple. So said, instead, you want this kitab of Shriman Seth. So we will give you the kitab, we'll give you public recognition, but give the money to us so that this very important text can be published. So he saw the light of reason, fortunately for all of us, and he put up the money, and so that's how the Shatkhandagam was published for the first time. And the Davla Tika, the first, a Tika on the first first 5 sections of the Shatkhandagam. And they gave him that Upadhi, Shriman Seth Danveer, Sitab Rai, Gulab Rai, Lakshmi Chand of Vidisha. So it was a huge struggle to get funds, and unfortunately, the struggle for funds is still there for books. It's still, people will happily give 5 lakhs and 10 lakhs and 20 lakhs for rituals, and for building temples, they'll give crores of rupees. But to buy a book of 100 rupees, they think 10 times. Today, someone called me, they said, if you're studying Prakrit, and I said, these are the 3 textbooks. You have the one by Dr. Jagdish Chandra Jain, the one by Nimichand Shastri, and the brand new one by Dinanath Sharma. I said, you should get all 3 textbooks. You'll be covered properly in terms of literature and the background of Prakrit literature. So, nahi, hum 3 nahi ek hi kharidenge hum to. I said, it's up to you. The books, the cost is negligible, but it's your call. I cannot compel you to buy, So there is this mindset that there is punya in building a temple. And unfortunately, there's no corresponding mindset. There is punya in publishing a text. So maybe if we could change that mindset, it would work, but it's kind of difficult. So we managed to work, and the idea is to, unless these books are published, people are not going to read them. So it's been my purpose in life to get as many books as I can, publish them in Hindi and English and modern languages. Otherwise, people are not going to read. I remember till I learned Prakrit in my mid-30s. I'm from Bombay, we studied English. And of course, you study Hindi, it's my mother tongue. And study Marathi because you study it in school, and you study Gujarati because I was interested in it. And of course, I studied Urdu and all later. That's personal interest. But I had no knowledge of Prakrit. And you had Peter Flugel and एक मुनि अभय सागर जी महाराज, they were bullying me, तुम क्या कर रहे हो, तुम ट्रांसलेशन करते हो हिंदी से इंग्लिश, ये क्या बकवास है, प्राकृत पढ़ने में क्या करना, हिंदी में हो गया ना. I remember Peter would spend hours and hours. You stay at Hirabag back then. So he spent like 10 days and we spent like 8 or 10 hours every day. And ये समझाता, Manish, you need to understand. And I said, no, why Sanskrit? Why not? Why Sanskrita? And why Sanskrit? Why not Sanskrit? And those typical idiotic things that people still say. And why Mahavira? Why not Mahavir? And but it's Sanskrit. And it took him and Abhay Sagarji Maharaj 5 or 6 years to convince me. I studied Prakrit in my mid-30s and then Sanskrit in my mid-40s under Shwetambar Jain Maharaj Sahib. And I understand that not everyone will do this. That's why it's so important to have books in English or Hindi or whatever. I mean, Tamil, Telugu, whatever. Arabic, French, Persian. I'm okay with all languages as long as, my dream is that, on Wikipedia, you type anything, you get information, right? Accurate information. I want that to be the case for Jainism. कि आप बोलो कि एकदम rare से rare book or something like say आचार्य अकलन का कोई ग्रंथ हो, सिद्धि विनिश्चय विवरण, उसका भी I want an English translation. सिद्धि विनिश्चय विवरण is such an important text. Mahendra Kumar ji, Nyayacharya worked on it, and it was so intimidating, such a daunting task that he only wrote a tika in Sanskrit. He did not attempt to write it in Hindi. But the Bhumika was so good that the Bhumika people said, isko aap use kar lo. So the Bhumika was converted into Hindi by Mahendra Kumar ji, and that is now known as Jain Darshan, which is probably the best textbook of the 20th century to study Jain philosophy. Even now, I remember 2003 mein Mahapragya ji had come to Bombay, and by then I was studying Jain Nyaya and looking for teachers for Jain Nyaya. And I went to Mahapragya ji. He was very close at CP Tank. The GT school, the Mahapragya school, is 10 minutes walk from my shop. So I went there कि आचार्य में आया हूँ and मुझे जैन न्याय सीखना है. So तुम्हारी किताब कौन सी, तुम्हारे हाथ में जैन दर्शन है? महेंद्र कुमार जी के हाँ, मेरे हाथ में किताब थी. I thought इतने बड़े आचार्य का I should give him a gift. क्या दूँ उनको? So I had this book in my hands. ये तुम्हारी जैन दर्शन है? So like 10 feet away said हाँ, ये जैन दर्शन. He was probably in his 80s even back then. हाँ, ये जैन दर्शन. तब बेटा मैंने इसको बहुत अच्छे से पढ़ा. They told me कि मैं तुम्हारे पास आता था. आचार्य तुलसी का चातुर्मास 1958 में हुआ था बॉम्बे सीपी टैंक में. हम लोग तुम्हारे दादा के पास मिलने आते थे. आचार्य श्री के साथ मैं भी आता था. एंड बहुत चर्चा होती थी. जैसे मुझे न्याय सीखना है. So then he connected me with Sadhvi Shutesha ji. She's a fantastic scholar of Jain Nyaya, one of the best in India. So she taught me Jain Nyaya under the Bhikshu Nyaya करने का. रोज शाम को मैं जाता था, उनसे न्याय सीखता था. So there is so much to study, Oshin, and we are so fortunate. There's so many. Just last year, 2024 में, this is young Muni, Manan Muni, and we said Sanmati Tark Prakan बहुत difficult है. I said, मर्जी मैंने भी पढ़ा नहीं, समझ में कम आता है. मैंने भी पढ़ा नहीं है, चलो आ जाओ. तो मैं रात को 9 बजे जाता था. 13 they use electricity. So रात को 9 से 12 जाके रोज पढ़ते, 4 महीने बैठ के पढ़ा पूरा सन्मति तर्क प्रकरण in its entirety, and मजा आ गया. So these granth, they're the rus of life, amrit hai inme. And we had lots of arguments and debates कि भाई इसमें that entire discussion कि दर्शन और ज्ञान एक साथ होते हैं कि अलग अलग होते हैं, युगपत होते हैं कि एक साथ होते हैं. And क्या मजा आया in that debate, understanding it, the various viewpoints. There's so much here. Even Shabdarshan Samuchaya, my son had gone for that Shabdarshan Samuchaya class at Ladnu. Like I envy you, बेटा, मैंने तो अपने आप पढ़ा था Shabdarshan Samuchaya, और क्या मजेदार टेक्स्ट है. I mean, Haripad Suri is a rock star. I love his writing. I love his sarcasm. If you see his Dhurtakyan, he's amazing. You see his Samarai Chikaha, क्या कथानक लिखा है उन्होंने. Upmiti is another one of my favorite texts. And Premi ji had done translation of the first 2 prakashas of Upmiti Bhavaprapanch Katha. Main the first ही है actually, but पहले 2 प्रकाश का किया था उन्होंने. Beautiful translation. बाद में Mahopadhyay Vinay Sagar ji did a beautiful translation published by Prakrit Bharati. But these are texts to study. Then there's a young Maharaj Sahib, Parijat Vijayji Maharaj Sahib. He did an short English translation of the Upmiti Bhav Prapanch Katha called Rags to Riches. मैंने उसको बैठ के पूरा ना 4 घंटे बैठ के उसको word to word मैंने correction किया था उसका. But there's a nasha to these texts. You see them and you're lost in a different world. I will no longer be Manish Modi, I will not be Oshin Bamb. We are both spectators on this flawless, fabulous journey called Jain teachings. And मुझे तो हर ग्रंथ में मजा आता है. प्रथमान युग, चरणान युग, कर्णान युग, द्रव्यान युग. There's so much to read and such fascinating insights. I mean, we work 4 hours a day, 1 to 5. हमारे गुरु हैं जयेश भाई से, आपको 4 घंटे काम करना बहुत है, आप बाकी सब स्वाध्याय में लगाइए. So 7 p.m. we are all done with dinner and everything. तो फिर स्वाध्याय कर लो जितनी चाहे. रोज स्वाध्याय का मूड रहता है, ये पढ़ो वो पढ़ो, ये ग्रंथ वो ग्रंथ वो ग्रंथ, हेल्प कर लो, प्रूफ रीडिंग कर लो, ट्रांसलेटिंग कर लो. बट इट्स सच अ ब्यूटिफुल थिंग. दिस जर्नी ऑफ सेल्फ रियलाइजिंग इज द ग्रेटेस्ट जर्नी इन द वर्ल्ड. एंड जैन ग्रंथों से सुंदर मुझे लाइफ में कुछ नहीं दिखा, ऑनेस्टली.
Just looking at you being so like enthusiastic, very much energetic, talking about all these Jain texts, and it makes us feel very happy that there should be someone like you in front of us whom we should follow in this particular domain. There's this line in Sant Naneshwar's Naneshwari and in the Pasaidan where he says, "Ha hoil jnana pasaho," where like you said that your life motto is to publish as many books as possible and to make knowledge available to all. That's what Sant Naneshwar has
Yes.
also followed in this particular life, and I'm so happy that you brought this particular thing up. But sir, when the new publishing houses, like in the 19th century and in the early 20th century, they were being established, like your own Hindi Grantha Karyalay, what sort of challenges were being faced? Because I have heard one of Professor John Coates sir's lecture where there was a kind of an opposition. So there's Punya when Bhattaraks and their Shishyas were making copies of the Hasta Likhitas and they were donating them.
Yes.
But there is no Punya. In fact, there is Papa when the books were being published. So what is your perspective on that, sir?
That is arising out of ignorance. So there were these sadhus who well meaning, but उनको लगा कि किसी ने क्या होता है कि they were not aware. किसी ने उनको कान भर दिए कि नहीं बाबा, when you're printing a book, so this ink is not proper, it's not kosher. And which is actually true that the glue that's used for binding is made of animal material. And they had strong objections to that. And people like Premi said, look, yeah, the same discussion was done by हरिभद्र सूरी. और when you talk about temple building, 10th century, कि भाई आपको टेम्पल बनाते उसमें भी पाप तो हो रहा है ना, पत्थर तोड़ते हैं, जमीन खोदते हैं, there is पाप, but then it is outweighed by the benefit. इसी प्रकार से maybe the glue is called sares back then, 1920s 30s में वो glue थी, अब तो glue नहीं है, they have different glues, chemical glues है. So maybe there is something not quite right with that glue, but look at the strength and look at what you're building and what you're sharing with people. And at that point, yes, especially there was opposition for 2 reasons. First, it was the printed books ka issue, that the glue was not quite up to their standards. Number 2 was a lot of these monks believed that Shatkhandagam and Kasai Pahud, especially Shatkhandagam and Kasai Pahud, were too holy and they should not be read by commoners. And people like Premi ji, Punchanji Shastri, Kailashchandji Shastri, all of the people who worked on them were all Shravakas. The sadhus have not worked. Even as late as the 21st century, you had Gyanmati Mataji, who wrote a tika on the Kashaya Pahud. Before that, all the work on the Shatkhandagam, on the Kashaya Pahud was all done exclusively by Shravaks. So, Premi ji said, पूरे के पूरे Shatkhandagam में कहीं नहीं लिखा है कि Shravak cannot read this text. So why should we not read these texts? And अगर हम नहीं करते तो आप कर लो. किसी न किसी को करना है. Now that is 1920s, 30s, 40s. Now in the 2025, all the sadhus have hundreds and thousands of books written by themselves. So it arose out of ignorance and perhaps some insecurity, but it's in the past. Everyone's publishing books. Everyone's going online. Everyone's giving online lectures. I remember when Astha channel started. So when I came back to India, 1999 or 2000, Astha channel had begun. I said, we want to meet sadhus, and I told the gentleman, boss, ये जैन साधु मानेंगे नहीं, इससे बहुत बड़ा पाप का काम है. तो नहीं, आप तो पता बता दो, मेरा नाम मत देना, मेरी पिटाई हो जाएगी. He said, no, they will all pay money. And today, all the sadhus who appear on all these channels are paying huge amounts of money to appear on those channels. So they realize that ultimately you have to reach out to people and they will use whatever medium that is available. Books were a medium back then, now we have other alternate mediums as well. Halaki, I still believe that if you want to study a text seriously, you got to have a book and pen and paper in front of you. You look at my copy of Sanmati Tarak Prakarana, it's got scribbled with thousands of notes. In my Samay Sar, when I studied first time 97, full of notes. I mean, I can't read half the notes I made myself. But that's how you study, yaar. You can't go on online and YouTube पे नहीं जी हमने सीख लिया. People can do it. So मैं pranam to them. I can't. I need to sit down with paper and pencil and study a text properly.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. And in fact, the usage of internet communication technologies and multiple other things which have brought the whole world closer, I think more and more is being offered to the studies of Jainism, as we'll see. But, sir, there is this kind of a thing when the scholars in the 19th and 20th century had a kind of a different approach towards studies. In fact, in one of the articles of Pandit Ji, where he goes on, in fact, to cross identify many of the Tirtha Kshetras, that the correct identification has not been done by people. That also has been argued by Pandit Ji. So, do you feel that that kind of a dare or that kind of an unbiasedness, in fact, a non sectarian bias, that scholars back then had in those writings, even Pandit Jugar Kishore Mukhtar ji and the other scholars of those times, do you think that that is still there in today's commoners? And what sort of things should we learn as commoners from such scholars regarding to the non-sectarian bias?
I think there's a huge sectarian bias now. It wasn't there. I told you all these people were, I mean, best of friends. Whether it's Premi ji, Suklal ji, Bichardal, they were all giants and they were very close friends. And they often referred to each other. And you have people like Jagdish Chandra Jain and Mahendra Kumar ji Nyayachari worked on Shwetambar texts. Premi ji's worked on Shwetambar texts. We publish all sorts of texts because for us it's Jainism. But over the years, this bias has evolved and become very strong. Especially with the ascetic community, there's a very, very strong bias. I think in America, they get it right with Jaina, other places, people like Jaswant Bhai, Suleik Bhai, they have no interest in these barriers. They have zero interest and you talk to them like, aisa hai, they will hang up, कि मुझे इसमें कोई interest नहीं, boss. In America, I've been there, I've given Parishan Pravachans 4 times. And Harbar, I've seen that these pathshalas are there. All the kids attend, whether it's Boston or wherever else, California, wherever all these bachas attend the pathshalas, they're taught both Digambar and Shwetambar rituals. रिचुअल तो स्थापना निक्षेप पे कर रहे हैं, उसमें क्या आपत्ति है? सारे कर लो. My son, Sambek, he goes everywhere to all temples. Jain temple होना चाहिए, दिगंबर है, श्वेतांबर है, तेरापंथी. He's chilled. He goes everywhere for his darshan, seva, sadhana. He does all of that. सब जगह जाते because ये तो तीर्थंकर परमात्मा है ना. तीर्थंकर परमात्मा को क्या आपत्ति है? But yes, there's a very, very, very strong bias now, and it is a fact of life. And again, the point I would try to emphasize is this bias is not within the Shravakas. श्रावक को कोई ज्यादा पड़ी नहीं है भाई, उसको तो जैन धर्म की कम पड़ी, number 1. But number 2, Jain Shravaks are pretty chilled out about Digambar, Shwetambar, Sthanakvasi, Terapanthi. The ascetic community is much more particular about, Ek Tithi, Be Tithi, all of these. So if the ascetics could get together, that would be the end of this. But unfortunately, after 1972-73, when they worked on the Samana Suttam at the behest of Vinoba Bhave, uske baad se I have not seen this kind of Sarva Dharma Sammelan where Janak Vijay ji was there, Acharya Tulsi was there, Acharya Muni Natmal ji was there, Acharya Vidyanand ji was there, he was Muni Vidyanand ji back then, and you had Sushil Kumar ji, you had all these giants working with Jineन्द्र Varni ji to create Samana Suttam. So that kind of universal goodwill has been, it's less prevalent, less common. I'm sure that it's there. There are pockets where they're very common, but overall, kam dekhne mein milti hai. And this, I think scholars are pretty chilled out. Whether it's scholars, whether they're Digambar or Shwetambar or Jain or non-Jain, they're working on Jain materials. Unko problem nahi aa raha hai. But ascetic community mein there are these very strong lines of division, which is sad, but it's one of those things that I think we will overcome with time. Um, I mean, the good thing is that the Granth Bhandars don't discriminate. The Granth Bhandars have everything. And they're happy. I mean, they will share stuff. कई बार लगता है कि फोन कॉल लगवाना पड़ेगा किसी के थ्रू, but they will share. They will share things and they keep things, they preserve them. And internally, जो discussion है that every sadhu is reading the Samaysar, every sadhu is studying the Shatkhandagam Kasai Pahod, every sadhu studies Shaddarshan Samucchay, most sadhus will read Samarai Chikaha, because these are beautiful, profound texts. They're beyond Digambar and Shwetambar. So you can take the example of Tatwar Sutra and Saman Suktam. भैया कहाँ तकलीफ है आपको? मुझे तो कहीं तकलीफ नहीं दिखती. And they're all beautiful. I'm happy to study all these texts, whether it's the Shashti Shalaka, Purush Charitram, or any of these texts. I don't see any problem anywhere. जैसे आप शर्ट पहने हैं, मैं कुर्ता पहना हूँ, या मैं टी शर्ट पहनता हूँ, या you wear something else, क्या फर्क? मैं व्यक्ति तो वही हूँ ना. आज मैंने ब्लू कुर्ता पहना, कल येलो पहना था, परसों व्हाइट पहनूंगा. व्यक्ति तो सेम है ना. तो थोड़ा सा लिबरल होना चाहिए. और तीर्थंकर परमात्मा की जो वाणी है, दैट्स फॉर सेल्फ रियलाइजेशन, सम्यक दर्शन. सम्यक दर्शन में कहाँ भेद आ रहा भैया? दिगंबर श्वेतांबर कोई भेद ही नहीं है. सो वी शुड फोकस ऑन सम्यक दर्शन. एंड बाकी, टू कंजर्व स्क्रिप्चर्स, वी शुड फोकस ऑन लर्निंग प्राकृत, डिसेमिनेटिंग प्राकृत वेरी स्ट्रांगली. एंड प्राकृत में भी कोई बायस नहीं आ रहा है, कोई इशू ही नहीं सेक्टेरियन. प्राकृत तो प्राकृत है. सो द वे फॉरवर्ड इज, on the one hand, you focus on Samyak Darshan, Atma Kalyan, because that is the final purpose of any religion, not just Jainism. On the other hand, प्राकृत से काम करेंगे तो फिर आपको मन में सो जो भी मन में भावना होती है डिलीट हो जाएगी अपने आप. यू रियलाइज इट्स ब्यूटीफुल ओशन है. आप कहीं से भी उसमें डुबकी लगा. मरीन ड्राइव, आप यू स्टार्ट मरीन ड्राइव फ्रॉम नरीमन पॉइंट और स्टार्ट मरीन ड्राइव फ्रॉम चौपाटी, है तो वही मरीन ड्राइव ना. क्या फर्क पड़ता है? बी ऑन मरीन ड्राइव, दैट्स इंपॉर्टेंट.
For this wonderful and enjoy the problem and its solution, and you very well actually pointed out what the solution should be, and it would definitely drive our scholars in the perfect. Sir, one last question from my side, so that their participation also matters for all of us. Sir, all the scholars that you have seen till now, some of them are even alive at present, and they are still working very hard. And then there are scholars, or there are budding scholars who are trying to make their spaces and make their own contributions. What is your personal, being the leader of the Hindi Grantha Karyalay, being the responsibility holder of such a long legacy of publishing scholarly books, being associated with so many scholars, what are your guidelines and what are your directives, or what are your seek as such for the young budding scholars of Jain studies?
I am too junior, I know very less. All I would say is keep your role models high. In India, you have Premi ji, you have Suklal ji, you have Mahendra Kumar Nyayacharya, you have Pandit Puchen Shastri, Dr. Hiralal Jain, Dr. A.N. Upadhyay. In the West, you've got Padmanabh Jaini, Nalini Balbir, Paul Dundas, John Court, Willem Bolle. Keep your targets high, set your goals high. At lead Meta, they are fabulous scholars. Unki raha par chaliye, even young scholars. You have Andrew Olet, you have Ellen Goff, Anna Beisel. You have so many good scholars there in the West. Stephen Bose. There's so many of them in the West, so many in India. जो इतना अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं. And I would say it's very simple. Keep your mind open. And मेरा तो बड़ा simple. If you fall in love with the subject ना, you can't go wrong. And एक सिद्धांत और मैं कहूँगा जो हमारे गुरु सिखाते हैं, I am here to give. Whatever I receive is a result of my past thoughts, words and deeds. और आई एम हियर टू गिव. मैं जब देने आया हूँ, लोगों को शेयर करने आया हूँ, तो कुछ झगड़ा ही नहीं ना. आप कौन से सोर्सेस चाहिए, मुझसे ले लो, क्या फर्क पड़ता है? अल्टीमेटली वी आर ऑल हियर टू गिव, राइट? वी वांट टू कंट्रीब्यूट टू जैन स्टडीज. तो जिसको जिस एस्पेक्ट में करना है काम करे, एंड दिल खोल के उदारता से काम करे. एंड ट्रस्ट मी, जब किसी को कुछ देते हैं, किसी का कम नहीं होता है. ये प्रेमी जी और शेयरिंग विद उपाध्याय जी, और उपाध्याय जी शेयरिंग विद प्रेमी जी, दोनों का स्टैचर कम नहीं हुआ, बढ़ा है. So we grow together. And there's so much which is unexplored in Jain studies that another 100 years, if we do it correctly, 100 साल भी कम पड़ेंगे. तो जितना आप शेयर कीजिए एक दूसरे के साथ. And yes, no shortcuts. Shortcut मत मारिए. Study Prakrit, study Sanskrit. Take the time to study. मेहनत कीजिएगा. ये मेरे मैं करता 97 में जब मैं मिला था पीटर फ्लूगल से, 99 में, कि नहीं जी हम हिंदी से इंग्लिश कर लेंगे। नहीं भाई, ऐसे नहीं, देयर इज इंफॉर्मेशन लॉस ईच टाइम। वो आप निरुक्ति और चूर्णीय भाषा में इंफॉर्मेशन लॉस हो रहा है मूल से। तो आप हिंदी ट्रांसलेशन से आप इंग्लिश करोगे फिर तो बेवकूफी है। So you've got to study the original scriptures. And you know, I'll share this article with you. I've written this article also published at ISJS. I think Pragya ji bhi hai yahan, on helpful information for young scholars. So मैंने पूरा detail दिया, how to get a book published, what things to look for, how to get an ISBN. All of that I've shared. जो मुझे समझ में आया इतने साल इंडस्ट्री में देखे, I've shared all of that with everyone universally कि आप उसको use करें. Don't get exploited by unscrupulous publishers and work honestly, diligently. Don't use, I mean, don't, copy things. Don't do that, what is being done. I don't want to name it. But वो सब नहीं करना है, ईमानदारी से काम करें कि सचमुच यू कैन स्टैंड फ्रंट ऑफ गॉड के भगवान में सचमुच ही मेहनत करी एंड दिल से मेहनत करी मैंने। आपको एट द एंड ऑफ द डे आपको रात को बैठ के अगर सेटिस्फैक्शन है। आई रिमेंबर हाउ आई स्टार्टेड ट्रांसलेटिंग। आई वाज डूइंग ऑफ कोर्स जैनिज्म because I went to a place called Devlali and I saw a very famous Jain text. I will not name the text because I don't want to take names. And उसका इतना खराब English translation था, it was 97 ऐसा कुछ. And I'm like, I'd gone with my mom. I said, मम्मी इतना खराब translation पढ़ेगा कैसे? English पढ़ेगा लेकिन ये तो सर पीट लेगा, 2 पन्ने पढ़ के वो रख देगा साइड में. So that's when I said कि चलो हमको बड़ी लकीर खींचनी है, तो हम ट्रांसलेशन करेंगे अवश्य. अब इतने सालों में करते हैं. ऑल्सो स्टडीड उर्दू एंड ऑफ कोर्स अरबिक. उर्दू का भी ट्रांसलेशन में करता था, तो रात को 1 बजे तक बैठे हैं कर रहे हैं. बैक देन ना कंप्यूटर एट होम, दुकान में बैठे हैं रात को 12 बजे तक 1 बजे तक काम. मम्मी फोन करी, मनीष क्या हुआ? मैं वाइफ तो सो जाती थी कि भाई तू जब आएगा तब आएगा. बट आई एक कॉमा एक फुल स्टॉप के लिए मैंने मेहनत करी. इट्स गॉट टू बी राइट. अगर ये पद जोड़ा है, च है, ये तो क्यों जोड़ा है? तो जब आप उतनी बारीकी में जाते हैं ना तो फिर निष्कर्ष मिलता है कुछ. तो गो इनटू बारीकी, गो इनटू द डेप्थ ऑफ इट एंड मजा है यार, मजा तो उसी में है. तो जब आप आनंद लेंगे और ईमानदारी से काम करेंगे, यू विल फाइंड दैट योर वर्क इज फ्लॉलेस. फ्लॉलेस तो नहीं होगा, हम सब छदमस्त हैं, बट इट्स ऑफ अ वेरी गुड स्टैंडर्ड. So that's what I would give advice. And anyone who wants to take my help, I'm always here 24/7, 365. मेरे साथ तो लिटरली है 24/7, 365 बिकॉज मुझे इंसोम्निया है. अगर आपको 3 बजे मैसेज करोगे, फोन मेरे पास होगा तो मैं आपको जवाब दे दूंगा. Shut eye, normally what I do is after 12 or 1, I keep the phone in one room and go to the other room, just keep my eyes shut and I lie down for 7-8 hours. तो body चलती नहीं उसके बिना. But I'm always here and I will share this link with you and with Saurabh. Please share it, this helpful information for young scholars and publishers. Okay, you get all the information that you need and ना बड़ा simple है, कोई कठिन बात नहीं. आपके पास, see, the printing and publishing is the easiest part. Content अच्छा बनाओ and that will only come with honesty and integrity. हमको ईमानदारी से काम करना है, ओरिजिनल काम करना है. And Ocean, there are so many texts, there are thousands of texts जिन पर काम ही नहीं हुआ है. आप जाके देखो तो सही. There's enough space for everyone to coexist. बहुत सारा, जिस मोक्ष में बताते हैं ना, बहुत जगह है मोक्ष में, सारे जीव भी चले गए तो प्रॉब्लम नहीं आएगी. तो जैन स्टडीज में बहुत जगह है और हमारे श्रावकों का दिल भी उदार है. सो ऑनेस्टली स्टडी एज मच एज यू लाइक. आपको भय नहीं रखना किसी चीज का. और मैं एक चीज बताऊं, आपका भाग्य कोई ले नहीं सकता. आपको जो पोजीशन मिल रही है आपके पुण्य से, वो आप बासी पुण्य का खा रहे हैं ना, सो दैट पोजीशन विल बी देयर फॉर यू. बिना डरे, ये भाव रहा है, आई एम हियर टू गिव, मैं सिर्फ देने आया हूँ. ये भाव रहेगा तो बहुत अच्छे से काम हो जाएगा. जुगल किशोर मुख्तार की मेरी भावना आपको मालूम है, उसको ध्यान में रख के काम कीजिए, लाइफ बहुत अच्छी कटती है. आई कैन टेल यू दैट. मतलब पर्सनल लाइफ भी, प्रोफेशनल लाइफ भी, और एवरी विच वे आपको अच्छा लगेगा.
Sir, in fact, I must say that apart from all the scholarly things that you have said, your sense of drawing analogies is really, really wonderful because it really makes people understand what you're actually wanting to say. Now, before I take any more questions from my side, I would give the chance to the audience. And Swati Rajan ma'am has asked one of the questions. Did Gandhian thought or debates on Gandhian philosophy influence the Jains who participated in the socio-political movements during the first half of the 20th century, like Ambalal Sarabhai, Anasuya Sarabhai, Ajit Prasad Jain, Lakshmi Chand Jain? If so, did this influence decline over time, leading to a strategy of harmonizing with other ideologies?
Very good question. So the first part is, let's go at the beginning of the first part. Srimad Rajchandji is one of the scholars who actually guided Mahatma Gandhi at a very crucial period of his own life. So Gandhiji himself is guided by the teachings of the Tirthankars. Then, of course, the Indian intelligentsia was in awe of Mahatma Gandhi, including my great grandfather Premi ji, and his son, my grandfather, and my grandmother would go to Prabhat Fairies in Bombay, because all of India is influenced by Mahatma Gandhi. And he was a giant. मतलब whatever people may say, मैं परसों एक talk पे गया था, and एक वस्तु पक्की है कि whatever you may people like to criticize Mahatma Gandhi has become popular now. Fine, let them criticize. वस्तु ये है कि before Mahatma Gandhi, the Congress party was in drawing rooms. Intellectuals in drawing rooms discussed wonderful intellectual ideas. But जो grassroots level पे जो ideology को पहुंचाने वाले महात्मा गांधी थे, उनकी ताकत थी, उनका करिश्मा था. So he was a giant in his own way. And yes, the many people influenced. Another person influenced by Mahatma Gandhi was Munshi Premchand. You know, he gave up his job, government job, and he struggled financially all his life. He heard Mahatma Gandhi's call. Also, Pandit Phulchandji Shastri, the giant scholar, he also gave up his government job. And all his life, he worked Shatkhandagma translation, ₹1 page, ₹2 page leke translations kiye. And he struggled financially, but he was such a fantastic giant, and the kind of work he did. So many Jains were influenced very deeply by Mahatma Gandhi. And एक और मजेदार बात बताऊं कि Mahatma Gandhi in 1913 he came back to Bombay from South Africa. तो हमारा हीराबाग जहाँ पर दुकान है, वहां पर in the hall they held a function. And Ramesh Bhai Ojha is a very important Gandhian in Bombay, journalist, me a leading journalist. So he told me, and Dharmadhikari, the present Chief Justice के पिताजी भी, Dharmadhikari जो महाराष्ट्र के Bombay High Court के जो Chief Justice थे, he was their Dada Dharmadhikari, and they both said that in 1913 when Mahatma Gandhi came to Bombay and he was moving into Wardha, he had started a Harijan magazine. So approached Premi ji कि ये हमारी मैगजीन है और इसका हिंदी संपादन का भार आप ग्रहण करें और आपको वर्धा रह के काम करना. सो प्रेमी जी, मेरा तब काम पूरे यहाँ सेटअप है, मेरे पास समय नहीं, बट एक बहुत बड़े स्कॉलर, मुझसे बड़े स्कॉलर, डॉक्टर महावीर प्रसाद द्विवेदी, ग्रेट जायंट of Hindi literature, who started the Saraswati magazine, which is the benchmark for magazines even today. तो उन्होंने कहा महावीर प्रसाद द्विवेदी को आप उनसे बात कीजिए, वो आपके हरिजन मैगजीन के संपादक बनेंगे तो बहुत अच्छा काम होगा. And Gandhi ji, on his advice, spoke to Mahavir Prasad Dwivedi. He was only too happy to oblige. He came to Wardha, lived there for many years, and Dwivedi ji was the first editor of Harijan magazine, and that's why Harijan magazine is such a powerful voice in India. When you look at the quality of those magazines, the kind of writing they had, तो बड़ा गौरव महसूस होता है और कई बार शर्म होती है कि what are we doing now? We had such giants back then, and now we are worried about pygmies, petulant, petty people saying silly things and getting TRPs for them. So it's a different topic. We'll not go there. But yes, those people were giants, and there was a palpable influence of Mahatma Gandhi back then. But yes, of course, even then there was a sense of democracy. People are not homogeneous. So even back then, people agreed with ideologies like the Jansangh ideology, RSS ideology. उधर भी थे जैन लोग, and आज भी है. So there were, गांधी जी के टाइम में भी लोग जैन आरएसएस में जाते थे, और अभी आरएसएस के टाइम में भी लोग गांधी के थॉट्स में जाते हैं. So there's no bandhan anywhere, and people have always been very open, and that's the beauty of India, is that everyone has and does exercise his free choice. मिथुन चक्रवर्ती भी चलता है, गोविंदा भी चलता है, शाहरुख खान भी चलता है, अमिताभ बच्चन भी चलता है, दिलीप कुमार भी चलते हैं, सारे चलते हैं अपने देश में. That's always been the beauty of Indian culture कि ये सारे acceptable. धर्म, अर्थ, काम और मोक्ष चारों वैलिड पुरुषार्थ हैं इस देश में. So they're all good, and I think they're all rock stars अपने आप.
In fact, sir, that added a lot to my own memories, because I personally belong to Wardha district, and my father is associated with one of the ashrams of Acharya Vinoba Bhave. So Swati Rajan ma'am has another question. She's asking whether there are research opportunities available on the integration of Jainism with modern values that have emerged during the Enlightenment period.
Yes, plenty. There are plenty of universities in India, about 70 or 80 in India, which are teaching Jain studies, and they will give you research opportunities here. You can do your PhD anywhere, Bombay University, etc., and several abroad where they will give you research opportunities. There are plenty of such universities. There's lots of place there.
I hope Swati ma'am's question have been answered now. There is a long question. In fact, it has a long prelogue to it. I'll just read the question by Vivek Gargji. He's saying that he's a non-Jain living in all side of Jain influence in Ujjain and in the Indore for 40 years. His question is, there are Jain universities all over in Pune, Ladnu, Delhi, Punjab, and many scholars are coming up learning Prakrit, Sanskrit, and Nagari. Organizations are Jito are there. Jains are among the top in the ministry, even national mission for manuscripts, everything. And we have also got the status of minority. But he says that there is money, human resources, influence, devotion, and power. How can we all contribute to the protection of all the scriptures, manuscripts, epigraphs, restoration of all the Jain temples? And because he thinks that it is the need of the hour. So how can we as commoners or as scholars contribute to this particular thing?
There are two ways as commoners and scholars. Scholars तो मैंने काफी cover कर लिया that you work on Jain studies, do a diligent job, work hard, read, be diligent. As a commoner, you contribute to Jain studies by buying books. Don't use PDFs. The greatest killer of Jain publishing is PDFs. I always discuss it with my son and other people कि भैया तू PDF ले रहा है तो इसका क्या होगा? You are killing a scholar. You are shooting down a scholar through the heart. You will have no employment left. See, ये बात आचार्य अजय सागर जी महाराज कोबा से भी बात निकली थी. When they started Jain library and all these things, I said, look, it's all good that old books, out of print books are put up there. That's fine. But if you're putting in books that I'm selling currently, then how will I make a living? Number one. Number two, I have to stop publishing books. सुनका नहीं मनीष जी बिल्कुल सही कहा आपने. अगर हम उस मुर्गी को खत्म कर देंगे जो अंडे देती है तो फिर आगे अंडे ही नहीं आएंगे. Bad analogy, but he exactly understood what I was saying. So if there are no publishers, I know so many books that I have published, I have pushed and bullied and cajoled and coaxed scholars to write them. अगर मेरे जैसा कोई भ्रमर नहीं होगा ना तो फूल तो बैठा है, उसके पास पराग तो है लेकिन भ्रमर चाहिए. तो publisher is the भ्रमर who will collect the parag and bring it together. So if you kill the publisher by using PDFs, there will be no initiative, there will be no reason to publish books. You will destroy the entire industry. फिर ये आप 100 साल पुराना उसको मार्क्स मूलर को पढ़ो और छाती ठोको. So if you want scholarship to survive, you will have to promote, and the easiest way for a common person, Vivek ji, is to buy books. और लोग कहते हैं नहीं जी ये किताब महंगी, तो ठीक है महंगी मत, like Brill's Encyclopedia of Jain 32,000 rupees. कोई बात नहीं, A to Z of Jainism खरीद लिए 1700 की, कुछ तो खरीदिए. बट सब हमको PDF पे चाहिए तो फिर कैसे आप सपोर्ट करेंगे स्कॉलरशिप? So that it's important as Shravakers, and forget Shravakers, as a normal, I have so many books on Christianity and Buddhism and Islam, and because it's fun to read about all of these things. हम सब कुछ, मैं तो जैक रीचर भी पढ़ता हूँ भाई, जॉन ग्रीशम भी पढ़ता हूँ. तो उसके लिए पैसे निकल आते, पर इसके लिए क्यों नहीं निकलते पैसे? हम मोबाइल फोन यूज करते, that's expensive. We wear shoes which are expensive, clothes are expensive. There's money for everything except books. That's a bit sad. So we must promote books, and the easiest way is to go buy a book today. You buy a book of Bhagavad Gita, आपने गीता प्रेस से खरीदी, you're promoting Gita Press. You're ensuring the existence of Gita Press. इसी प्रकार Jain books खरीदिए, you're ensuring the existence of Jain publishers. वरना वो जिनवाणी को, हम पूजा की किताब को जिनवाणी बोल के हम उसी में सीमित रह जाएंगे. It will be the greatest loss to mankind.
In fact, sir, now that you have mentioned this, that the publishing houses are dying, I remember that there were publishing houses in Wardha where the Chaure family has also published multiple primary works of Jainism. In fact, from Solapur, we are still having that Jivraj Jain Granthmala where people are still publishing books. I very much agree with the kind of things that you've said, sir. People should definitely buy books. And are there any further questions from the participant side, Saurabh? I can't see them in the chat box. So it seems that many of the scholars and many of the listeners today have got benefited a lot from the kind of talk that we have had with you. In fact, it appears to me that it should not be just one talk, but there should be a series of talks like this with you, where you can just elaborate on multiple things that have been done by Hindi Granth Karyalaya, by the kind of academicians that you have been associated with, or the kind of vast treasure of knowledge that you have. In fact, this world of virtual media would be very much helpful to bring us all closer, get a step closer to Samyak Darshan, Samyak Gyan, Samyak Charitra. Can you please? Yes.
I'll be very happy to be part of this yajna of knowledge. I'll be delighted to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, sir, for readily accepting that particular invitation. And I, on behalf of Ancient Jainism, it's time for me to express a formal vote of thanks. Instead, I would say that thanking a person who has spent time, efforts, his decades of efforts, like pains into publishing so many books. Books are not just books, but they are memories. They're not just memories, but they are pieces of knowledge. They're not just pieces of knowledge, but they take humanity to becoming one step closer to a better human. So I feel that you're doing a wonderful work, sir. Your family, your ancestors, in fact, Pandit Nathuram Premi ji would be proud that his legacy has been carried out very well. In fact, if I would not have said that you are the great grandson of Pandit Nathuram Premi ji, it is quite evident from your own independent personality that you are an independent scholar who needs no introduction. Now onwards, when we have a next class with you, I will make sure that we will not give a very detailed introduction to you. So thank you very much, sir, for this time, efforts, and the kind of knowledge that you have shared with us on ancient Jainism. And I also thank all the respective scholars who have joined us today, who have been till this, I think, 1 hour 20 minutes have already passed that we were talking. Manish Modi ji was very enthusiastic. He did not even drink a sip of water when he was speaking, and he was all smiling throughout this particular session. It just tells us the kind of enthusiasm that we should also incorporate into our own lives. Thank you very much, sir, once again. Pranam, and hope to see you again in one of the series. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. You're very kind. I thank everyone who was here. Indo Park match छोड़ के आप यहाँ बैठे. I'm so grateful to all of you. And Ocean, ये तो मेरे रुचि का विषय है. मैं रात को 12 बजे तक बैठ सकता हूँ. I've actually sat. जय सुंदर सूरी महाराज थे. हम लोग रात भर बैठे हैं. बस अगर जैन धर्म की बात निकली, हम रात पर महाराज जी बेचारे आचार्य थे, सीनियर थे, 60+ वो और मैं उनके 3-4 शिष्य रात भर बैठे बातें कर रहे हैं. Because there's so much to learn. एंड इतना प्यारा, इतनी प्यारी परंपरा है हमारी. वी आर सो फॉर्चुनेट एंड सो ब्लेस्ड. देयर इज सो मच टू लर्न, सो मच टू सी. एक एक पहलू इतना गंभीर है ना, और उसको खुलासा करने जाओ तो खुलता ही जाता है. तो इट्स द मोस्ट ब्यूटीफुल थिंग इन द वर्ल्ड. ओशन, यू कम टू बॉम्बे. सौरभ, आपसे भी मैंने इनवाइट कर रहा हूँ आपको. यू हियर, बैठिए. हम तो एंड वी देयर इज नो प्लेस. आई रिमेंबर वंस आई हैड 2 स्टूडेंट्स फ्रॉम स्वीडन, एंड मेरी मम्मी आ रही थी एयरपोर्ट से उनको पिकअप करना था कलकत्ता. तो एयरपोर्ट तो पहुंच गए. यू रीच लाइक 45 मिनट्स 50 मिनट्स अर्लियर. अब वहां बैठे, दे वर स्टडीइंग दिस ग्रंथ, योगसार या परमात्मा प्रकाश. तो वो अपने 3 सीटर होता है नॉर्मली बॉम्बे एयरपोर्ट में ना, 3 सीटर की बेंच होती है. तो एक मैं बैठा हूँ 5 फुट 7 इंच, यहाँ एक 6.5 फुट, यहाँ एक 6.25 फुट. वो 2 बैठे हैं. दे आर फेसिंग मी, आई एम फेसिंग देम. मैं उनको योगसार और परमात्मा प्रकाश सिखा रहा हूँ. 40 मिनट लोग देख रहे हैं कि ये ब्राउन देसी एंड 2 लंबे लंबे गोरे पढ़ रहे हैं. 40 मिनट बाद मम्मी आ गई, तो फिर उनको लेने हम लोग गए. मम्मी, ये लोग कौन है? फिर मेरे स्टूडेंट्स हैं. बट ये आप एयरपोर्ट में बैठ के पढ़ सकते हैं, होटल में बैठ के पढ़ सकते हैं. आई मीन, ये सब ना मुझे बहुत घबराता है अशातना शब्द से. आपने अशातना बोल के गला काट दिया स्टडीज का. मैं तो कहता हूँ ट्रेन में बैठो पढ़ लो, क्या आपत्ति भैया. भगवान तो परम भीतर आ गए, और परम ऑस्पिशियस भगवान की दिव्य ध्वनि है, उसमें क्या तकलीफ है? नहीं जी, हम ऐसे पहनेंगे. आप रोज पढ़ो, दिन रात पढ़ो, जितना पढ़ो कम है. पढ़ते जाओ. My good wishes to all of you. Jai Jinendra.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much. Jai Jinendra. Pranam.